Overhead squat. From a standing position, you will have your feet in line with your hips or slightly wider. You can slightly point the toes out, but ever so slightly. Having the arms in line with the ears if you can. And you will squat down to parallel. If you can go further than parallel, if that's your normal range, then by all means you can do that. The aim is for as minimal compensation as you can. So try and keep it nice and strong using your core and grounding through your feet. Doing this from a front angle and a side angle so I can see from both sides how far you're able to come down and if there are any compensations at ankles, hip shift and into your shoulders. For each angle, 3 to 5 reps. Standing hip flexion. So from a standing position, you will bring the knee up towards the chest, use the hands to squeeze it in, and then try your best to maintain that position as you let go of the leg. So squeezing it in, trying to maintain it as you release the hands, holding for a second and then lowering down. And obviously doing both sides from a front view so that I can see this from the front, and then I'll also ask it from a side view. You might also be able to get a judgment of any impingements here. There was an impingement on my behalf. It is a lot better, but I'm still working on it. So sometimes what happens is when you've got weakness and imbalances, the knee pops away a little bit quicker because of weakness or tightness in areas. So it would just be a case of just trying the best to maintain your standing posture, not sacrificing any form as you're doing it. So squeezing in as much as you can, bracing it at the core, grounding at that standing foot, trying to hold and then release. Standing hip extension. So extension is taking the leg back. So it's just that little bit of momentum while they're taking the leg forwards, using the wall as a bit of support, taking the other arm across the body, keeping the back straight. So we don't want to be arching the back here. As you take the leg back, we want to keep everything in line. This is what you're not going to do. So as you take the leg back, we aren't going to be arching our back. So I've got a bit of a arch in my back here. This is comfortable for me, but I do know that this isn't the correct form. Prone hip external rotation. So for this one, you'll bend up the leg and just have the foot flexed. The hip will be externally rotating, so you're turning outwards. So it'll look like the bottom part of the leg is moving inwards towards the midline of the body. Obviously, you'll have that neutral center from the knee. So we don't want the knee kind of flaring out or lifting up off the mat. So you want to keep it grounded as you bring the hip into external rotation, allowing the leg to kind of just fall in with a slight bit of control and moving it back to the center, to that neutral position. Prone hip internal rotation. Bending up into one leg, flexing into the foot, you'll be having that action of turning the hip inwards towards the midline of the body. So then the bottom part of the leg will move away from the body. So keeping everything nice and controlled, drawing in the navel so you're not going to arch your back. Keeping the control as you move the hip, obviously the leg, away from the midline and controlling it back to that neutral position. Ankle dorsiflexion. So if you use a phone or something of the same size against the wall and then place your foot behind it, and this is going to be the best judgment you're going to get from away from the wall. So bending up the leg, trying to take your knee as close as you can to the wall without your heel lifting, and then switching to do the other side with the same direction so I can see it from the inside. And obviously then you would move the camera to the other side so I could see the other angle from the other leg, outside and inside. Just trying to make sure that you're keeping the heel down, taking the knee as far as you can towards the wall so I get a judgment of how far away it is, and then easing on out of it. Forward lunge. So from a standing position, feet underneath the hips, don't take the feet together. Keep them in line with the hips, tuck the pelvis under, tall with the spine. take the leg forwards, keep it in line rather than taking it in between. Hands can be at the hips or across the shoulders. You're just going to alternate your reps here. So go from the right leg and to the left leg, taking that from a front angle to start with. And you're going to make sure that you don't do this. So as you come forwards, we're not going to think of tightrope legs. So you don't want to be taking it in through the middle. We want to keep the legs train track legs. Think train track legs, not tightrope legs. So feet in line with hips, keeping everything nice and in line as you lunge forwards and coming back. We're going to do this from a front angle, and then you're also going to do it from a side angle. So exactly the same, just so I can see your alignment within your hips, your knees, your ankles, etc. If you do between 4 to 6 reps for each angle. Seated trunk rotation. So this is from a cross-legged seat. So if you find that when you cross your legs you do this, then just don't bother doing it, because I'll find the compensation anyway. So from a cross-legged seat, take one arm across the other, lift up your elbows. Make sure they're not down, so make sure they're lifted. And then from there, you're going to rotate as far as you can to one side without compensating. Come back to the centre and switch. Just making sure that it is your trunk that's rotating and not your head and your neck and not from your shoulders. So your midsection is doing the rotation, keeping the control as you transition to each side, pausing for 1 or 2 seconds at your maximum and returning back to the midline. If you do around 4 to 6 reps in total. Active straight leg raise. So lying on your back, hands by the sides, legs remain straight, feet flexed if you can. And you're going to lift your leg up as far as you can without bending the knee and without kind of jolting anything at your back. So the whole back must remain down on the ground as you raise your leg up. As you can see, my range is quite good here. And obviously it's took me a lot to get to that. So if yours isn't like this, please don't force to try and get to this. Yours might be different. What you can do is, if you want to see a better judgment, I didn't actually use one here, but use a pencil or a clip in line with your hip, like just popping it next to it, so then I can also see how far you are away from that and I can measure it. Obviously we do each side just from this angle, just so I can see how far you come. Do around 3 to 4 reps for each leg. Splayed toes. So from a seat, just have your knees soft, and you're going to just try and spread your toes out as wide as you possibly can, and then let that go. You're just going to try and get as much space as you can in between your toes. Big toe raise. So from a standing position, keeping your little toes down, you're going to try and raise your big toes up as high as you can, and then release them down. You'll then do this from a side view for both feet, so I can see the difference in range in between both. Surprisingly, big toe extension can have a lot of impact on things higher up the chain. Feet view. So just basically taking pictures from all angles for your feet, so from front, side, obviously each side, and then so of your arches also, so that I can see each arch and the back too. Kneeling thoracic rotation. So from your knees, you're going to bring them closer together. Bring the forearms out in front of you. And you will take one hand behind the head. You'll draw the elbow close to the ground and then open as far as you can without compensating. So the aim is to keep the ribs close to the leg. We don't want to be lifting it up too much. So if you do around 3 reps for each, taking a brief pause at the top. So what we don't want to see is this, as you are taking your rotation and letting your ribs flare and open and out, lifting it away from your leg. So this will become a false reading. So we want to keep the ribs down towards the leg, so that as I can see, when you rotate, it's just your upper body, your thoracic shoulder area that is lifting up. Leg lockout. From a standing position, you will bend into one knee and then straighten it and lock it out bend it back in. You do this just from this angle for obviously both legs. I wouldn't want you to do this test at the expense of any pain, so just making sure that you're being very safe as you're straightening out your leg to lock it out and bending it once again.